Welcome to AI Fire Hose. Good Lord, do we have a lot to talk about. Mikhail Voloshin, David Mattin, thanks for joining us. Guys, I just got off a plane from California. I was trying to unplug. I was supposed to be enjoying the gorgeous seaside views. I got caught on my phone reading about do we call it news flow? Do we call it drama? My God, has a lot been happening in the AI space. Let's dive right in and start talking about it. Mikhail, let's start with you. Big picture, 50,000-foot overview. What in the hell is going on?
OpenAI announced a huge expansion of their offerings. Next thing you know, their CEO, Sam Altman, gets fired. Next thing you know, after that, a huge uproar from both the worldwide AI community and also internal staff at OpenAI arguing that it's telling the board either the board goes or Sam Altman goes. Well, after that, Sam Altman gets reinstated. The board, as far as I know, is history. And what's on the horizon now is OpenAI is developing a new algorithm called Q-Star that's allegedly going to blow everything away.
You know, so many interesting points you made. There's so much weirdness going on with this story. David Mattin, so the board of directors here was not just like a typical corporate board intended for-profit purposes. And a lot of this is not just like the typical corporate drama around compensation, around succession. This is right about the core of the technology, what it's going to be used for, what the benefits are, and what the risks are. David Mattin, what do you think, big picture, about all the stuff happening?
Yeah, an incredible and intriguing 5 or 6 days. And obviously anyone interested in technology was just utterly glued to it. And we've all scrolled about 50 billion miles on our phones, keeping up with this. I mean, it was insane. But exactly as you say, I mean, OpenAI is not a standard organization. And that's the point. It was never intended to be. And it feels as though what's happened here and the reason it feels so weird is a manifestation of that truth, and essentially a manifestation of something of an internal war at OpenAI about the true direction and the true nature of the organization. I mean, in accordance with its name, when it was founded, it was supposedly, or certainly presented itself as something akin to a research organization that was hugely sort of about understanding of machine intelligence and how it can benefit society and how it can be developed safely. You can feel that under Sam Altman in the last couple of years, it has acted more as a straightforward startup. Very interested in bringing products to market and monetizing them and making money from them. And yeah, I just think those two visions of OpenAI just smashed into one another across the last couple of weeks. And it would appear that the Sam Altman faction won that altercation,
right.
That car crash. And OpenAI will proceed as something much closer to a standard startup, to a standard, for-profit, market-driven organization from here on out. And look, is that great? Is that necessarily a win for all of us? I'm not so sure. I think that's to be decided.
Well, here's the other thing that's interesting to me about this. If you own shares in a consumer packaged goods company, you do not wake up one morning to hear the board of directors and management fighting over, is our jelly too powerful? When you put it on your rye toast, is it going to destroy the world, right? This is the fascinating aspect of this. The core questions here about the nature of the technology itself, about the nature of its ability to change essentially the human experience and Western civilization, Eastern civilization as we know it. I mean, you couldn't have a bigger set of questions around this technology and its future applications. Tell us a little bit about that debate. I mean, really, it's a strange moment to wake up and find yourself with a private company stating that essentially their technology may be so powerful that they don't want to develop it to its fullest potential and that they need to tap the brakes and slow it down. I mean, that is a weird debate to have.
So I think that David really nailed it, that the fight over Sam Altman was ultimately the fight over the heart of what OpenAI is all about. I've often said that OpenAI was never actually a company in the first place. It was a research consortium that accidentally developed this incredibly powerful product. And when I say accidentally, it's worth noting that large language models existed before OpenAI. And in fact, the transformer model that they use wasn't even developed at OpenAI. The point is that the question that OpenAI found itself wrestling with was, are they going to continue to be a pure research outfit, or are they actually going to try to make money? Here's the funny thing about their intentions towards being a pure research outfit. They were rumored to be interested in raising up to $100 billion in pure nonprofit capital dedicated to the purpose of pursuing the goal of safe and universally accessible artificial general intelligence. And I think that there was a certain faction that basically said, look, if you want $100 billion, you don't need to, like, you can have a for-profit venture that will raise that for you faster than you can ever beg, borrow, and steal that out of rich and poor and government people's good nature.
But so, Mikhail, what does this word safe mean? Talk about this idea of what safety means with AI, because this is a question that some of the folks here on the board had really existential questions for the human race, at least as they saw it. It ties in with this idea of effective altruism. For people who are watching this conversation on video, they might be able to see behind me my book about Sam Bankman-Fried, where effective altruism played a major role in the decision-making of the buildup of FTX. Here we have an effective altruism debate again. What are the questions here around safety? What does that mean? And why is it so important?
So in the context of artificial intelligence, safety is accessed through the technical term alignment. And alignment refers to whether or not the machine is doing what you intend it to do versus whether it's doing what you told it to do. This is a problem throughout the programming industry. Like, obviously, our machines always do what we tell them to do, not what we want them to do. That's where bugs come from. But in the context of artificial intelligence, this becomes a particularly onerous challenge, because the margin between what you wanted it to do and what it actually does could be so catastrophically huge that it ends up being a genuine health, safety, and well-being risk to the to not only the individual programmer or requester of a task, but also to everybody around him. The classic example I use of a misalignment problem is the homicidal Roomba, which I've talked about on here before. Your Roomba's job is to keep your apartment clean, and a hyper-intelligent Roomba will recognize that you are the main source of mess in your apartment. Therefore, it will kill you in order to, and then clean up your body. And that'll be like the last and only mess that it'll ever have to clean up. So that's simply the most efficient and optimal way to solve its job, right? So the problem is, with safety, is that at some point somebody is going to build, I don't know, like a police bot or something like that, and give it maybe it'll only arm itself with a nightstick, but they'll task it with the objective function, make sure nobody steals. And so that police bot will do what it has to do in order to make sure that nobody commits theft, which is murder every human being on the planet, thus making sure that no humans exist that can commit theft. So the probability of it getting out of hand is the main risk that people are deathly concerned about in this line of research.
Right. Hey everyone, have you yet checked out the incredible, groundbreaking new Real Vision platform? See, we've built something that allows you to live your financial life in one place. We bring together the knowledge, tools, and network to help you thrive in your financial journey. We've got AI tools to help expand your knowledge. We've got courses and education. We've got note-taking. We've got pricing and charting. And in addition, we've got obviously the world's best content, both on macro and crypto, to bring everything together. And in addition, you get access to the Real Vision network. That's our tens of thousands of members across the world where you can connect and chat to them about what really matters to you. Anyway, it's free, realvision.com. We'll see you there.
David Mattin, let's pull the camera back for you. Big picture, what do you think safety means? What are the stakes?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mikhail's right. The stakes are existential. That's the conversation we're having. We're having a conversation about, are we creating a technology that may destroy us or lead to some kind of catastrophic event for humanity? I mean, we've built technologies like that before. Of course, nuclear weapons springs to mind immediately for everyone, but no one. I mean, this is slightly different. No one was worried that nuclear weapons would develop aims of their own, or sort of second or third order aims based on kind of inferred knowledge about what we want it to do in the way Mikhail's describing. Of course, then the next question becomes, how close are we really to anything like that? And even the elite community of sort of AI godfathers, as they're called, the people who essentially created this technology or created the underpinnings of it, just are in total disagreement about the answer to that question. Profound disagreement. And it would appear that people within OpenAI are in profound disagreement about it. Sam Altman is in an awkward place because he's been the poster boy for a global tour of AI. This technology we're building presents an existential threat. I need to go around, a tour of the world leaders and parliaments and senates and explain this technology to them and the threat that it presents. And yet at the same time, he appears to want OpenAI to run pretty much as a kind of conventional startup, monetizing products, moving broadly as fast as it possibly can. That there's an awkward tension in the way he's positioning his technology. I mean, what do I know? We cannot know the answer to this. My sense, if I have to bet my house on it, is that we're not awfully close to machine intelligence at the moment that can take over the world and kill us all and turn us all into paper clips. And it feels like the very little that we've had from what really went on inside OpenAI, it sounds as though the board were unhappy with Sam Altman's transparency and his communications with them, and perhaps felt he was taking the organization, as we've discussed, in a direction that was not compatible with its kind of initial charter, its initial manifesto. It doesn't sound as though it was about a full-on head-on collision about a specific technology that is extremely dangerous. There's been a lot of talk about this Q-star stuff, and I think we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
It's not clear how much of a factor that really was in what went on inside OpenAI.
Well, we're going to talk about Q-Star in just one second, but I want to frame this up here a little bit when we talk about this question of how close we are to this point, and give a little bit of context around how people in this space and in technology more generally think about this. One of the phrases that's been used quite a bit over the last few decades is this idea of technological singularity, the idea that you reach a point where technological change becomes both uncontrollable and irreversible. Those of us of a certain generation will remember the movie War Games. Well, can't you just unplug the damn thing? The idea here behind the singularity is that you can't unplug the damn thing. There's no safe word in AI, that it gets to a point where there's just the inability of human beings to actually control the technology. Is that what we're talking about here in terms of the question, David, about how close we are to the point where this becomes something that can become, as you say, an existential threat?
That is essentially the question we're talking about. Yes, will we lose control of machine intelligence? And you can see how there can be a runaway effect, because if we create a machine intelligence that is advanced enough to truly kind of do things on its own and develop goals of its own, one of the things it can do is start to develop a better machine intelligence, which will in turn develop a better machine intelligence. I mean, this is the classic runaway scenario that's been posited. Those iterations can happen essentially at light speed. And before you know it, you have a machine intelligence that is vastly more powerful than the last one you created, and essentially is now outside of your control. we're in a place now where that is not merely the realms of science fiction. We need to think carefully about those kinds of questions. And yes, that does tap into the kind of singularity discussion. I mean, that's now a very well-established word, and people use it to mean lots of different things, which is one of the, that's one of the things that bedevils discussions of this kind, is that people use these kinds of words to mean different things. To me, the most useful definition of the singularity is, just as a physical singularity, essentially a black hole is a point in space where the laws of physics, the laws of the known universe break down. The singularity is that we're talking about is some kind of event where all the existing norms and sort of laws and traditions of our history, of human history, break down. Essentially, all bets are off. An event that changes everything, so that human history as we've lived it so far will then tell us nothing about what is about to happen. That, to me, is the most useful definition of that kind of singularity. And the creation of a machine superintelligence that is out of our control would constitute that kind of singularity, because that would be an utterly, utterly radically different set of circumstances to the circumstances that have prevailed all through human history beforehand. But like I say, how close are we? I don't think we're that close yet. If this happens next month, this clip can be replayed 1,000 times on Real Vision, proving how wrong I was. But yeah, I mean, what do you think? I mean, how close do you think we are?
Maybe our machine overlords will attempt to bury this clip if it happens next month.
Nonsense. They're going to use it as propaganda to show off how stupid the humans are. Now, I, for one, welcome our machine overlords, as I've said many times on this channel. No, I actually disagree, David. I think that we're pretty darn close, but my understanding of the singularity is somewhat different from this idea that it'll automatically lead to some kind of super intelligence. The idea that a machine can sort of can self-improve in ways that we didn't expect or anticipate does not in and of itself imply that it will then become a super intelligence. It'll become smarter than it was before it started self-modification. It may very well become smarter than us. But the idea that it's going to become some kind of godlike being is constrained by certain epistemological truths, such as the induction problem, which I perhaps will go on a tangent about later.
What the heck does that mean?
It means that no matter how smart you are, you cannot get past certain you cannot get past dealing with unknown unknowns. So it means that if you've seen the sun rise 1 billion times, you can't prove that there isn't some factor out there that's going to stop it from rising on day 1,000,000,001.
Okay, Mikhail, I got to ask you this. That sounds very theoretical. And on the other hand, you're saying you think we're really close to a point where it does get out of control. So tell us a little bit about what it would look like to get out of control without being super intelligent, as you say.
Well, we live in a world of 7 billion sentient entities, some of which are smarter than us, and and we're all capable of self-augmentation. We can increase our own capabilities through the use of external cognition and reading books, using tools, that kind of stuff. So far, the number of human extinction events, at least for Homo sapiens, numbers at 0. So this is not like. We can have a machine that's extremely intelligent, but that does not necessarily know how to destroy all humanity, and more importantly, gets lost in the weeds of worrying about whether or not one technique or another will or won't work. More importantly, a hyper-intelligent machine could very well end up going down a philosophical rat hole that will make it question its own reality and wonder about the nature of its own existence, as many, many, many intelligent people before it have. And so look, we've talked about this before. We mentioned the paperclip scenario earlier. I believe that an intelligent machine will not take over the world and turn everyone into paperclips. I think it's more likely to descend down some sort of weird rat hole where it's like, I need to increase my collection of paper clips. Well, what is a paper clip, really? If you think about it, all things are paper clips. So really, my collection of paper clips does not require transference of, you get the idea. It'll equivocate. It'll find ways to fool itself and to make stuff up. And therefore it'll be
just like we do.
And it'll be about as threatening as your average high school stoner.
Well, the good news is that almost all of those 7 billion people on the planet are smarter than I am. Fortunately, I get to ask the questions. I don't have to answer them. Let me ask you this. This reminds me of a topic that became very popular, I guess, in the 1990s, this idea of gray goo. Does anybody out there remember gray goo? The idea that molecular-sized machines, nanotechnology, where it's going to take over the universe, become self-replicating, and essentially not just destroy humanity, not just destroy Earth, not just destroy the solar system, but destroy the universe in a self-replicating fashion, which in a certain sense might have been the ultimate conceit about the ability of human beings to not only pollute their own ecosystem, but to destroy the universe itself. I sort of wonder, the world is still here. Grey goo hasn't taken over. Is there a sense that some people have that maybe the fear of this has gotten a little, I don't want to minimize it, of course, but is there a question of, are we maybe not quite as close as some people think?
I mean, I do agree with Mikhail that the more likely scenarios are the kind that he outlines, and I totally agree that you can have a machine intelligence that's able to iterate itself. It doesn't necessarily mean it becomes super intelligent, and you can certainly have super intelligence. And again, however we want to define that, without this machine intelligence becoming a kind of existential threat. When we talk about AI wanting to sort of turn us all into paperclips or destroy humanity or start World War III or whatever it is, yeah, that's it's not hard to see that that's really a deep expression of our own internalized fears and collective anxieties, and an expression of how we as human beings see the world and our future and sort of what we're scared of. The likelihood is that machine intelligence, if it becomes super intelligent, if it's able to develop goals of its own, will see the world in a way that to us is just completely inexplicable and probably nothing to do with the sort of creation or destruction of more human beings. Those are very human things where we're imputing all these human impulses to this machine. I think the more real and present danger is not machine intelligence that we lose control of entirely, but machine intelligence that is controlled very effectively by a handful of elites and technologists and Silicon Valley people to their own ends. Again, it's not hard to see that raises the specter of all kinds of deep questions about the social impacts of that, the economic impacts of that. I mean, we just live in a world where more and more and more rewards are flowing to the owners of capital and the controllers of capital and technology. And AI would appear to, again, be a massive accelerant of that sort of that trend. Where does that head? Raoul and I talk about this all the time. He talks a lot about it in GMI. Where do we end up if we end up in a world where just a few owners of technology sort of create and win the rewards of all the value, and there's barely any room for people in the economy? Those are the kinds of questions I think that are more pressing. And it has to be said that there are some people who would rather distract us with questions. And again, I don't want to minimize it. We do need to think carefully, but they would rather distract us with these kinds of existential questions that are a little bit sci-fi, and have us think less about some of the deep social economic implications of this technology.
David,
it's such a great point that you make there, and look no farther than the NASDAQ 100 performance over the last year-to-date period to see that dramatic flow of capital to the folks who are creating this technology. Mikhail, pick up on what David said in terms of the questions about that are essentially political, social, and organizational questions around AI.
I think he absolutely nails it on the head. When you say that these existential questions are distractions, that's how I see Sam Altman's campaigning about going to politicians, talking about the dangers of this technology and keeping it under control. To be clear, Sam Altman, up until very recently, ran a a for-profit subset of the nonprofit OpenAI. It was basically a for-profit group inside of the otherwise nonprofit consortium. And like, he's going, like, I can't think of any better marketing copy than like to sell their product than to go around to like heads of state being like, our product is too dangerous to release. We are having to hold it back. We're only reluctantly making the littlest bit of progress that we possibly can because you can't handle it. So look, the nonprofit and versus for-profit questions come straight to the heart of what David was just talking about in terms of the collection of capital and the hoarding of these AI resources among a small cadre of individuals. There's a funny thing that happens when you release a product to the market. In order to make a profit on that product, you have to let other people use it. So the Sam Altman approach actually allows access to OpenAI's technology to the masses, while the nonprofit consortium's approach would have kept it huddled and secret behind, within the labs of this tiny little, fairly reclusive company that insists that no, you can't see it because it's too dangerous.
Is this the world's most brilliant marketing copy, David?
I think yes. Essentially, I would agree that, what you've seen across the last year with the tour of parliaments and presidents, I mean, just absolutely remarkable global tour. And it has been a lot about marketing. I mean, it's an incredibly effective and sort of cunning and daring marketing ploy, exactly as Mikhail says, to tour the world saying, I have a product so powerful it may destroy us all. I mean, and of course when you go back to the grey goo thing and some of the concerns around AI and how they've perhaps been inflated or distorted, you have an interface, a literal medium between the truth and the people, and that's the media. And the media loves a great headline. Like what gets through that filter is just incredible, spiky, powerful, exciting headlines. And Sam Altman's global tour really supplied the media with headline after headline of exciting, scary, stories. That's been a huge part of it, because like I say, Altman is really torn between this tension of wanting to say this product is so powerful it may destroy all of humanity, and wanting to lead a startup that's putting products out there that's operating pretty much as a conventional company. Look, I mean, if it's really true that the board threw out Sam Altman because they're concerned that there is a machine intelligence cooking up there in the lab that is existentially dangerous to humanity, we need to go in there. Public officials need to walk into OpenAI and learn the truth. If this was a weapons manufacturer and there'd been some kind of, massive fiasco at their company, and there were kind of internal murmurings about a technology that's so powerful it may soon utterly rewrite sort of the human future and potentially destroy huge swathes of humanity and the economy and whatever, then, we'd go in there. We'd want to go in there. Why is this different? I suspect it's different because the truth is that we're not really there yet. But Sam Altman just wants to equivocate and not really say that, because he knows that, fueling a lot of the excitement behind OpenAI is this idea that they're just about to create AGI. They're just about to kind of pass this incredible, make this incredible breakthrough. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, at the moment, what they're, exactly as Mikhail said earlier, what they've been most successful at, ironically, is, given their sort of founding as a research organization, is not the creation of this technology. That was Google researchers who invented the transformer model. It's the monetization of it. Other people invented the large language model. OpenAI did a lot to develop it and help perfect it, but they really went insane when they found a way to create a really killer product around it. And that was essentially simply to just plug it into a chat app and call it ChatGPT. That's what sent the world crazy. So it's marketing and product that they've actually been best at so far.
Boy, for those listening on audio, we should point out that Mikhail's cat has gotten up and stirred around on that. That is a fascinating point, David. The idea that essentially what this is about is productization of the underlying technology, which did not before exist, building a front-end interface, a chatbot on top of it. Mikhail, jump in, pick up on that or any other points you want to head on to.
Oh, 100%. The prior to OpenAI, the like transformer models, along with other types of LLMs, such as recurrent ones based on recurrent networks and long short-term memory networks, were primarily used for writing marketing copy, and they weren't particularly good at it. One of the things that made OpenAI's GPT project so compelling was the sheer amount of data that they blasted into it. The degree to which they spent effort training this thing and building the sheer size of the network was unprecedented, and it was largely an experiment to see, like, will it continue to get better as you grow the network and feed more data into it? And turns out the answer was a resounding yes. I don't think that they necessarily knew that going in. We've certainly, like, neural networks have been around for a very, very long time. I can talk about their history at length, but the point is that it has not always been the case that if you just throw more neurons and more data at a network, that it'll automatically get better. And in this particular case, it did. And that's why they're on the map now. It's also worth pointing out that prior to getting big with GPT, my own experience with OpenAI, and I think a lot of other developers' experience, was with, and I could be facing hallucination here, but they had a project called the OpenAI Gym, which was a really cool little toy where you could, basically they would pit little neural network agents against one another in various games, like Capture the Flag or Tag or Battleship or just like little just toys, right? And so the idea is that programmers could write their own AI agent, submit them to this gym, and just have it run autonomously, like hundreds of thousands of times, millions of times with other opponents, against other opponents, and then like learn and get better. So they were already like playing with the idea of exposing AI to the general public in little incremental, like cutesy ways, before they, ran this experiment, and now GPT is all that anyone knows them for.
David, you want to touch on that?
I mean, yeah, I think it's instructive to look at the recent history of Altman inside the organization and what he's been really good at. And what he's been really good at is putting OpenAI front and center of a broader story, and a story that started somewhere else and that is developing in all kinds of ways, in all kinds of directions. And yeah, OpenAI need vast credit. I mean, GPT-3 was a huge step up in terms of large language models and their competence. But no one, people were excited, but people in my world were excited. It's not like the world was excited until they created ChatGPT. And just that word chat really set people on fire. And this idea that you could talk to this thing and it was very natural. It was just a route in for millions of people and a really intuitive way for them to understand what this technology was about. And it's clear that there is some internal tension, to say the least, in OpenAI about, who are we really? What's our soul as an organization? How do we, proceed from here? Do we want to just kind of move fast and break things? Or do we want to, do what we originally said, which is be socially responsible and be primarily about the, how do we develop this technology? How does the world develop this technology in a way that's safe? And we're just going to have to keep watching. I mean, it's fascinating. It feels now that the conversation around safe AI is up for grabs in a way that it wasn't before, because OpenAI are kind of stepping back from, they're not stepping away from that conversation, but they're clearly not going to be the organization that is at the heart of that conversation in the way they were originally intended to be. So you see in the last couple of hours, Meta has just announced, along with IBM and loads of other partners, what they're calling the AI Alliance, which is this big organization, big new organization, to have a industry-wide conversation, including academia and policymakers and all the other stakeholders about AI safety. That's a clear attempt to step into the positioning that we all once thought OpenAI would inhabit, but they seem to have stepped away from, because that's a very influential conversation to own. It's a great marketing conversation, and you get to shape the regulatory environment, which is another thing Altman and OpenAI want to do. They want to shape the regulatory environment to consolidate their lead. And that's why that conversation is so valuable.
Whenever one company in a particular sector gets very powerful, it always seems as though their competitors form a consortium to have a conversation around what they're doing. It's just like this interesting thing that we just see time and time again in business.
It also plays to OpenAI's financial interests to create regulations that didn't exist when they were rising, in order to sort of lock the door behind them. Now that they've made it up on, into the upper echelons, let's make sure that others can't get there too. So let's I tend to be quite a cynic about these things. Let's not talk about these whole safety concerns as if they're anything more than rent-seeking and empire building. OpenAI wants you to believe that what they're doing is extremely dangerous, so that you will beg your politicians to prevent other people from getting to the point that OpenAI has already reached.
This sounds like it could be like a Netflix comedy series. Like the three of us should go on a global tour to talk about this powerful black box that we've developed, that we're ultimately going to IPO, and we're going to beg the world's leaders to constrain the industry around us because it's just too powerful.
Now, look,
I'd watch that show. I mean, Netflix should pick that up.
Yeah, that's a great drama.
We've seen this precedent in, I believe, season 3 of Netflix. Season 3 of South Park. Cartman gets himself gets $1 million, uses it to buy an amusement park, and runs ads on local TV saying there's this really awesome amusement park and you can't come in. It's got all these rides and only I get to ride them. Anyway, the chief question that I think hamstrings the entire discussion of safety in AI is that on a technical level, I am not sure that the concept of restraining a sentient being through some kind of behavioral constraint bolts or anything like that makes sense. I don't think that a being that's capable of self-modification is also capable of being fitted with the kind of parameters that will prevent it from breaking out of some kind of corral, especially not if it's smarter than us, especially not if it's seeded with an entire corpus of sci-fi stories that human beings have written about how such machines break out and the strategies that they take for overcoming their own boundaries.
I love it. So we're gonna have to make sure that the machines don't get a hold of 50 years of dystopian science fiction around artificial intelligence.
They already do. We already trained GPT on an enormous corpus of literature, which includes, for example, Isaac Asimov's Robot series, which is all about how these robots are built with inherent constraints, fundamental to their entire existence, and yet they still are able to find ways to I shouldn't say circumvent the constraints or escape the constraints, but rather adhere to them in very creative ways that end up completely undermining the existence of the constraints in the first place. And it's like I said earlier, any sentient being is going to be capable of equivocation. If you tell it not to kill people, it'll redefine what it perceives as a person. If you if you tell it to not steal, it'll redefine its understanding of property and theft. You're not going to hold these things back any more than you can people.
By the way, this is literally right out of Isaac Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics that we're talking about. Let me just throw one thing out here. I want to talk about Q-learning, reinforcement learning, so-called model-free learning, because there's a lot to talk about here in terms of the technology. But let me just throw this out there. Effective altruism, it's a word, a phrase, a buzz kind of phrase that's been in the news a lot lately. Do you guys put any stock in it at all? Do you care about it, or do you think it's a distraction?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
David.
I mean, I'm very interested in effective altruism, and obviously now you have the whole effective accelerationism kind of movement.
But by the way, let's define that effective accelerationism, because in many ways it stands in opposition to effective altruism's view of AI technology.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, accelerationism is a movement, is a philosophical movement with really interesting kind of roots of its own that go all the way back to, I mean, certainly to the 90s, and you could do a genealogy beyond that. But in the 90s at Warwick University, a British philosopher called Nick Land did a lot of work around the early internet and sort of cybernetics and what a connected world meant. And obviously in sort of 1992 in rainy Britain at Warwick University, these were incredibly exciting and outlandish ideas. And most people would plot a line when it comes to accelerationism back to kind of Nick Land and that community at Warwick University. And essentially, it gets very thorny and very contested very quickly. But accelerationism is essentially about saying it's futile to attempt to hold back the intensely powerful machine that is techno-capitalism. It's futile to try. We shouldn't try. Our destiny and the destiny of the world, of the universe, essentially is technology. And all we can do is lean into that force and accelerate the processes of technological change. And this new kind of effective accelerationism movement is about saying that, and about saying, how can we do it most effectively? And I guess, how can we do it in a way that most benefits human beings? So it's about saying, contrary to the popular mainstream position at the moment that technology is running out of control and we need to rein it in and it's becoming too powerful and it's dominating our lives too much. The real path to utopia, to a better future, is to massively accelerate the forces of technology and essentially of capitalism, and get to some kind of tech-fueled utopia. That is a caricature to a certain extent of the position, but I hope it gives a rough idea of the position. Effective altruism is much more skeptical around technology. I mean, it has a nuanced position around technology, but effective altruism has its roots in saying, let's bring evidence and science and reason to our thinking about altruistic work and charity work. Essentially, let's bring real hard evidence and deeply kind of researched arguments to our beliefs about what we can do to make the world a better place. Because we're all trying, we hope we're all trying to do good. We're trying to make the world better, but often our efforts are not evidence-based. They're not very effective. They don't really work. We waste a lot of money. How can we avoid that? That's what effective altruism is about.
Mikhail Voloshin, did you just reposition your camera to better feature the one sheet for your 2016 science fiction novel, Dopamine?
It actually features it a little bit less effectively at this point, from my view. But now that the cat escaped, I figured I would show off a little bit more of my bookshelf, where the astute observer will notice a series of Warhammer books, which they should infer would put me solidly in the effective escalationism camp. Where I do believe that the sooner we can give rise to the machine god, the better and quicker our salvation will come. Praise the Omnissiah saves. The further observer will note that this is Warhammer Fantasy rather than Warhammer 40K, but I'm not going to get into the detail on that.
By the way, it's official. We've reached the point in the conversation where the news flow component is over. We're just diving into pure nerddom now. If you're not a member of that, go to another YouTube channel, because we're going deep right now. Something that we wanted to talk about since the beginning of the show, something that I know that you're passionate about, Mikhail and David, that you are interested in, is this idea of Q-learning. What's happening with the algorithms right now? Because there are many people who believe that we're at this point where we're about to experience a significant shift in the level of what this technology can do in the near term.
So I like, if you don't mind, David, I would love to field that first, because there's I've been seeing a lot of misconceptions floating around about this, about the Q-star algorithm and about its relationship to a lot of other things and what it can exactly do. So first of all, the Q-star algorithm is not directly related to Q learning. It unfortunately also has the word Q in it, or the letter Q, but it's not related to deferred reinforcement learning, and it is not it's a completely separate class of algorithm. It is also not related, as some people have said, to quantum computing, though the intersection between quantum computing and artificial intelligence is itself a very fertile field for discussion, which we won't have time for today, obviously.
But let's try and just put some rough definitions around this, just to give people who are interested a sense of what these technologies do and why they're different from what we have today.
So the Q-star algorithm is a theorem prover. It was not developed at OpenAI, at least if they're using Q-star to denote the same algorithm they're working with internally as what academic papers have used Q-star for.
But what does it do? What does it mean?
It's a theorem prover. It's if you give it a bunch of logical statements, like, this exists and this implies that, then that must be true. It's if you feed it with a gigantic database of facts and relationships, it can infer new. It can infer new. I don't want to say facts, but if you feed it with axioms, it'll derive theorems from those axioms and the relationships therein.
How about this? 2 questions. Number 1, how is that different from what we have today? And number 2, what can it do in terms of functionality that might be more enhanced or advanced than what we have today?
So the Q-star algorithm by itself has been around since 1973, and theorem provers are even older than that. So it's a branch of AI that was developed during the quote unquote AI winter, and it's been known to be able to. It's a pretty powerful theorem prover as far as they go, but it's been part of our world, and we haven't had much to do with it. So you can prove new. You can prove mostly already proven theorems in mathematics, but that's kind of not a lot of people care outside of a very esoteric bubble. So what happens is when you rig it to a neural network, you can solve. Basically what happens is there's 2 kinds of logic, induction and deduction. Theorem provers are great at deductive logic, but deductive logic is incapable of establishing truths about the world. It can only establish truths within a closed axiomatic system. Inductive logic can determine truths about the world, but it can't do anything with those truths. And neural networks are really great for performing induction. So the idea is that if you have a neural network doing induction in order to learn truths about the world, and you have a deductive module powered by something like Q-star that is able to work with the truths discovered by the inductive module and then derive subsequent implications from them, now you've got something that actually is capable of observing and reasoning and drawing conclusions.
David, want to jump in? I'm lost.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an excellent description, and in short, it's about taking a step closer, just as Mikhail said, taking a step closer to a kind of machine intelligence that is like human intelligence. We can walk around the world, learn things about the world around us that are contingent. They're not necessary truths. They happen to be the case. The sun rises every morning. When I'm cold, I shiver, whatever it is, we can gather that kind of information from the world. We can also reason from first principles. We can be given a set of exactly axioms, and then we can do closed reasoning that allows us to deduce new truths based on those kind of simple axiomatic truths we've been given. If you can have a machine intelligence that can do a bit of both of those things, you just have something that's more akin to a human intelligence. No one's saying it would therefore be a human intelligence or as powerful as a human intelligence, but you've taken a step closer. So it's easy to see on the face of that why some people in OpenAI might believe, this is potentially a huge breakthrough, and we're not treating it in the way our initial charter or manifesto said we should treat these kinds of breakthroughs. But I mean, it's not clear to me. I mean, Mikhail, we're not totally sure, are we, that that's what Q-Star refers to inside OpenAI? This, again, is stuff that's been inferred by, extremely knowledgeable machine intelligence people like Mikhail with years of experience and in the academic literature and all of that. But no one inside OpenAI has really come out and explained this, which I find startling because, if you guys, I mean, the organization is still called OpenAI. If you want to be remotely transparent, and if you really are so concerned that this technology is so powerful and needs to be regulated and might destroy us all, do you want to tell us what happened with this whole fiasco? Do you want to tell us what Q-Star refers to? They haven't said anything, as far as I know.
OpenAI has hundreds of employees. So if there's something absolutely earth-shattering in there, the idea that there are 700 employees of that just signed the petition to reinstate Sam Altman. That's just the Sam Altman faction. That's not even counting the rest of the employee base. Now, not all of them are developers. A lot of them are stuff like RLHF trainers and publicists and whatever. But that's not the point. The point is that if you really think that that all of them are keeping some sort of absolute breakthrough secret, then you probably believe that the moon landing was a conspiracy too. So I believe that it's much more likely that they are marrying a fairly conventional implementation of Q-Star with with their existing plugin system for GPT that allows for GPT to access a deductive module in a way that's very similar to the way that it accesses a calculator or the web nowadays.
But guys,
I think that's right.
What might this technology do? Like, how might it actually impact its applications? What types of problems might it solve? What types of functionality could it deliver to end users? I still don't have my head around that.
If you give it a series of facts about it, like just tell it in plain English, a series of facts about like either yourself or your company or some situation in the world, it can assemble those facts into, like, behind the hood, it'll assemble those facts into symbolic logic and use and like figure out how they all come together. And then it'll give you an answer about a prognostication about your situation or your company or whatever that's likely to be that's informed by reasoning rather than by off-the-cuff inference.
So Mikhail, can you make up a toy example for what this might be?
I mean, the oldest syllogism known to man. If I tell it Socrates is a man and all men are mortal, it'll be able to tell you that Socrates is mortal. So the point of the neural network is to find patterns in the world, and the point of the deductive module is to figure out how those patterns come together in order to predict the future state of the world. It's a very powerful marriage, but it's ultimately completely dependent on how exactly you expose this to the real world in general. Here's a toy example that I can think of. It might find that every single time a company, like, it might find that every time a company in a certain industry makes a certain kind of announcement, that like its stock dips. So it'll be able to reason that if the and then every time its stock dips, then it can infer that like such and such hedge fund loses money, or like such and such other consequence happens. So it'll be able to piece together that like two-stage thing that like the company, it'll read the news, it'll see the company makes this announcement, and then it'll be able to infer, okay, well that means that the stock will lose money, and then that in turn means that this hedge fund will dip. That in turn means that that so-and-so person will have less money. That in turn means that, like, I don't know, their mistress will not get a good Christmas gift, and the rest is, I don't know. It can perform this chain is what I'm getting at. Right now, GPT performs the illusion of being able to do such chains of reasoning, but the number of links in that chain is very limited. Ash, you and I had a talk where I demonstrated that it can find the GPT can reasonably find its way around a small map of a house, but it gets lost in a very long hallway. When it's hooked to a navigation system, right? This new system would not have that constraint. It would actually be able to reason across many different domains and be able to draw logical conclusions across many steps of connection.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I mean, I think what people, and again, this is something of a simplification, but what people really need to understand is that, the large language models we're using at the moment are trained on the deep statistical relationships between words as they're commonly used by us, as they're commonly used in sentences. So fundamentally, this is a machine intelligence that is very good at sounding right. If you say something to it, it will come back to you with the kinds of things people typically say in response to that. But it has no idea and is not capable at all, really, of reasoning about whether it is truly right or not. There's kind of reasoning instantiated in the way we use language, and it can. And because it understands those statistical relationships, it can kind of reproduce those kind of that reasoning. It can kind of simulate it. But what Mikhail's describing is the beginnings of a large language model that does that, but it also has true, actual reasoning capabilities. So it's the promise of an AI that, for example, a theoretical physicist could sit down with and say, look, I'm working on this new model of quantum gravity. There's this component, there's that component, the maths here, the maths there. But when I move the model in this way, it just doesn't make sense. And it won't just fire back with sort of statistically likely words that sound like they could be part of this discussion. It will actually be able to truly reason and deliver the outputs of that reasoning. So it would be like having a calculator for reasoning, if that makes sense. And that's something new and that is very exciting. But I totally agree with Mikhail that, look, if this was some earth-shattering, dangerous revelation, just to go back to the kind of politics and the fiasco of it, it's ridiculous to think that all 600, 700 people are keeping that a secret.
Right.
One other thing that I find interesting about it is, look, you can see that you can see the really, really interesting directions research is going in. Mikhail talked earlier about the realization, the breakthrough, and it really was a breakthrough, that if you train these transformer models on vastly more text, they become much, much more powerful and competent. And that was really the huge breakthrough between GPT-2 and GPT-3. No one was talking about GPTs and large language models with GPT-2. GPT-3 was a huge breakthrough. Suddenly it sounded like a person. It was writing short stories like Oscar Wilde. Everyone was excited. And that was achieved simply by training it on a vastly bigger data set, much, much more language. There is concern, and certainly the thought that we're reaching the limits of that. We don't know yet, but will it be the case that an even bigger data set is going to lead to another quantum leap in competence? Lots of people think probably not, but that there's many competence gains and performance gains and all kinds of exciting stuff to be had around this kind of work. Combining this kind of AI with other kinds of AI and other kinds of models that just expand the competence of the AI more broadly. And I think that it's interesting that Q-Star points in that direction. OpenAI are clearly looking at what can we do to make this thing better beyond just an even bigger data set.
It's worth noting that the human brain is not just one thing that's built up to billions and billions. We have a language module, or Wernicke's and Broca's areas, combined with a visuospatial module, combined with a reasoning module, combined with a whole bunch of other things. And so it very much makes sense that if you're going to if you want the computer to reason well, you don't just build a bigger neural network and try to hope that reasoning capabilities will emerge magically out of it. You integrate it with a known system that's been around for multiple generations, not just decades, but generations, that's already been very, very good at logical inference, or deduction rather, and you just connect it to that.
Guys, extraordinary conversation, bridging the gap here between neuroscience and artificial intelligence at the end. Really incredible. This is the place to have these conversations on Real Vision. We just couldn't appreciate you more joining us. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Ash. It's always so fun dropping in.
This is always a blast, and I look forward to next time when there'll be even more developments, more excitement, and we will get ever closer to summoning the machine god.
Wow, what a show, guys. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for watching.
We hope you enjoyed the video. At Real Vision, we help you understand the complex world of finance, business, and the global economy with in-depth analysis from real experts. Join the revolution at realvision.com.